created rules to stop him.
The all-time leader made field goals.
I'm not that concerned. I know it's the first time he's going to miss the season. LeBron James has been that dude in terms of his physical conditioning. This season was never about winning.
Michael Jordan has 10 scoring titles. Michael Jordan was a 9-time All-NBA defensive team member. Michael Jordan won 6 titles, 6 NBA Finals MVPs, never once allowed a game to get to a championship series to get to a game 7. Never once. That was in his 13 years in Chicago. We ain't counting the 2 years with the Wizards. He was trying to become an owner, and they needed him to come out of retirement to have an ownership stake. That's what they needed. We're talking about his 13 years in Chicago. That's what he's done. By the way, played 82 games 7 or 8 times. All 82 games. By the way, it was significantly more physical back then. You see, somebody like you would have got arrested. You understand? You can't touch him. Can't touch him today. Back then, you could mug him. You understand? They created rules to stop him. You understand? Watch The Last Dance.
LeBron James, that is simply not acceptable. You cannot hold the title of the league's face, lead a franchise, serve as the example younger players look up to, and then disappear before the final buzzer sounds simply because the outcome wasn't in your favor. Stephen A. Smith's argument wasn't really about a single moment captured on camera. It was about something much deeper than that. It was about the standard that comes with being who LeBron James is. He kept returning to one central idea, that genuine leaders stand in front of the loss. They don't exit early. They take it publicly, alongside their teammates.
One moment, it was about standards. He kept coming back to the idea that true leaders stay there and take the loss publicly with everybody else.
I'm not that concerned. I know it's the first time he's going to miss the season.
Now, obviously, LeBron's fan base pushed back almost immediately. The defense was predictable, but not entirely without merit. He's emotional because he genuinely cares. Michael Jordan had emotional moments. Kobe Bryant had emotional moments. Tom Brady smashed tablets on the sideline. Elite competitors despise losing, and that passion is part of what makes them great. And honestly, that part of the argument is valid. The greatest players feel losses differently, especially when the expectation surrounding them is a championship every single season, no exceptions. But here's why this particular situation grew beyond a single post-game clip. LeBron has faced this exact criticism before. Walking off the floor early after losses has come up repeatedly throughout his career, and every time it surfaces, it reignites the same conversation about what real leadership looks like and whether LeBron fully meets that standard under pressure. And here's the part that nobody is really saying out loud. Stephen A. Smith likely understands exactly how damaging this kind of moment is for LeBron's legacy at this specific point in time. Because as players age, the public stops giving them the benefit of the doubt. Frustration stops reading as passion and starts reading as decline. Bad body language stops being a rough night and starts becoming evidence that the era is winding down. And with LeBron turning every remaining season into a championship or nothing mission this late in his career, the scrutiny surrounding every move he makes has never been more intense. What made the situation worse was everything happening inside the game itself. The Lakers looked completely flat on the defensive end. Transition defense broke down repeatedly. Communication between players collapsed at critical moments. The offense devolved into isolation play after isolation play with no real movement. And as things unraveled, cameras kept finding LeBron, arms raised in frustration after missed assignments, eyes locked on teammates after turnovers, slow jogs back on defense that told their own story. Every Lakers game carries national attention, and fans notice every single detail now. Stephen A. zeroed in specifically on what that image communicates to younger players in the locker room. His argument was direct. When your franchise cornerstone walks off the floor before the game is officially over, what exactly does that say to everyone watching from the bench? That's when the conversation shifted from being about LeBron individually to being about team culture. And culture conversations around the Lakers have been complicated for a while now. The Lakers entered this season genuinely believing their star power was enough to compete with anyone. On paper, pairing LeBron James with Anthony Davis should make any team dangerous, but modern basketball doesn't reward pedigree alone. The Western Conference has become ruthless. Oklahoma City looks like a legitimate threat. Denver still has Nikola Jokic anchoring everything. Minnesota has quietly built one of the better defensive rosters in the league. Dallas improved. Phoenix still carries offensive weapons. And through all of it, the Lakers consistently look like a team trying to survive rather than a team trying to dominate. That's precisely why moments like this get amplified so loudly. If the Lakers were winning games consistently, nobody would spend 3 days dissecting LeBron leaving the court a few seconds before the buzzer. But losing reframes everything. Losing makes facial expressions look significant. Losing makes quotes sound like confessions. Losing turns one bad possession into a symbol for every structural problem the organization has been ignoring. And Stephen A. Smith understands that dynamic better than almost anyone currently working in sports media. Something else people tend to overlook is that Stephen A. has been in LeBron's corner many times throughout the years. He has praised his longevity, his basketball intelligence, his sustained dominance, and his overall impact on the game's history. So when Stephen A. comes out this aggressively and this publicly, it registers differently than typical media criticism. It doesn't feel like someone looking for a reason to attack. It feels like genuine disappointment. The underlying message was essentially, you are too good for this moment to define you. Don't let it. And that message landed. Even a portion of LeBron's own fan base quietly acknowledged that the optics were difficult to defend. This is where things get genuinely dangerous. Once leadership starts getting questioned in public, it finds its way into the locker room whether anyone intends it to or not. Players see the headlines. Coaches watch the clips. Front office personnel track the narrative. Nobody has to say a word directly, but doubt has a way of entering the atmosphere and slowly reshaping how people feel inside a struggling organization. That's how fragile teams crack under pressure, not all at once, but gradually. And the Lakers already look emotionally fragile during games. One bad quarter flips the team's entire energy. One scoring drought changes the body language on the bench. Compare that to Denver or Boston, organizations that stay locked in and composed even when games get ugly. The Lakers often look emotionally exhausted the moment games start slipping away. That contrast is impossible to ignore. Another reason this story refused to die is that everything involving LeBron at this stage connects automatically to the GOAT conversation. Every decision, every reaction, every visible moment gets absorbed into that debate whether anyone wants it to or not. Jordan fans use the clip as confirmation of what they've always believed. Kobe fans brought up Mamba mentality. Older basketball observers started talking about how legends in their era stayed until the final buzzer regardless of the score or the pain. To be fair, selective memory is doing real work on all sides of this argument. Legends were not immune to emotional reactions. Kobe openly confronted teammates in public settings. Jordan was notoriously ruthless in practice, sometimes to the point of humiliation. Magic Johnson once pushed for a head coach to be removed mid-season. Great competitors react emotionally. That's not a new phenomenon. But social media has fundamentally changed how these moments are processed. A single clip gets replayed endlessly for days, each cycle adding new commentary and new weight. Perception becomes reality faster than it ever has before. And for LeBron specifically, perception matters enormously because he has spent the better part of 2 decades carefully constructing an image built on leadership, composure, basketball intelligence, and professionalism. When something disrupts that image even briefly, it stands out more sharply than it would for almost any other player in the league. The standard LeBron set for himself is the same standard he now gets measured against in moments like these. The other uncomfortable truth running underneath all of this is that age fundamentally changes how audiences interpret behavior. When a young star shows frustration courtside, fans call it fire and competitive hunger. When a veteran approaching the end of a historic run shows that same frustration, fans start reaching for words like decline and fade. That's not fair, but that is how sports culture operates. LeBron is no longer just competing against opposing teams. He's competing against the narrative that time eventually wins every battle.
And yet, some of his frustration is genuinely understandable when you look at what he's working with. The Lakers roster has been inconsistently constructed for years. Role players who hit shots one game vanish the next. Bench production disappears at the worst moments. Defensive effort fluctuates wildly depending on the night. Anthony Davis, for all of his remarkable talent, continues to draw criticism for failing to deliver consistently when the stakes are highest. All of that lands on LeBron's shoulders in ways that are genuinely unreasonable for a player at his age. The burden he carries nightly is enormous. But that's also exactly why Stephen A's criticism cuts so deep. His core argument was that the truly great ones find a way to absorb frustration differently, especially in public, especially in the most visible moments of a loss. Because younger teammates don't just follow a superstar's plays, they follow his energy, they follow his body language, they follow the emotional signal he sends when adversity hits. If the leader looks like he's already given up on the night, the locker room starts processing that feeling whether anyone acknowledges it or not. This is where talented players often misunderstand what leadership actually requires. Talent fills arenas, talent wins individual games, but energy controls locker rooms. Body language shapes team confidence. Composure under pressure determines whether a group rises together or quietly falls apart. The moment a team starts feeling emotionally disconnected from its leader during difficult stretches, the collapse tends to follow quickly. That's the real warning Stephen A. Smith was delivering, not just a criticism of one moment, but a genuine concern about where this is heading if nothing changes.
Vogel's going to take some of this blame,
No question.
right? They're going to point the finger at him. And this is what's really bothers me, Molly and Stephen A. This season was never about winning.
And the hard truth is that the Lakers are running out of runway to get this right. That's what makes the pressure feel so suffocating right now. Every season LeBron plays becomes more urgent than the last because nobody can say with certainty how many elite years he actually has remaining. So losses carry more weight, drama gets louder, expectations feel increasingly impossible to meet. What accelerated this story even further was the wave of reactions that came from former players and analysts across the media landscape. Some defended LeBron completely, insisting people were magnifying a single emotional moment into something it was never meant to be. Others aligned with Stephen A. Smith, maintaining that all-time greats are held to a different leadership standard and always will be. And once former players start publicly debating whether a legend is leading correctly, the narrative machine kicks into overdrive immediately. You could also sense that Lakers fans themselves were already emotionally worn down well before this moment happened. A large portion of the fan base is genuinely frustrated, not just with one loss, but with a pattern. This team talks about championships constantly, but rarely looks convincing against top competition. They handle weaker opponents well, then fall apart when the moment demands the most from them. That cycle of inconsistency makes emotional flashpoints like this feel more significant than they might otherwise be, because the fan base is already anxious about what this team is actually capable of achieving. Through it all, Stephen A. kept returning to the same central argument. Perception is everything when you are LeBron James. Whether the intent was there or not, leaving the floor early produces an image, and that image becomes ammunition that critics will reach for indefinitely. And on that specific point, he's completely right. The internet does not forget moments like these. They get cataloged, replayed, and referenced for years. At the same time, there is a legitimate case to be made that the criticism itself carries an unfair edge. LeBron James has existed under championship or failure expectations since he was 18 years old. Think about what that actually means. Over 2 full decades of his life, every single season has been dissected, every decision scrutinized, every loss treated as a referendum on his greatness. That kind of sustained pressure would erode almost anyone mentally. So there are people who look at a moment like this not as a sign of weakness, but as the visible weight of carrying an entire league on your shoulders for 20 years.
But sports culture is not built around context. It is built around moments, optics, clips, and the stories those clips tell. And a clip of LeBron walking off early while Stephen A. Smith